quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum. 2 people are absent.
Okay. All stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First item is the approval of agenda. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Community comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll move to recognition, awards, and presentations. Sodexo Stop Hunger Grant of $1,000.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I am Brenda Boehm, Director of Food Services with Sodexo here at Faribault. I just want to recognize Sodexo Stop Hunger for donating $1,000 to the Basic Blessings Backpack Program. They have already received those monies and they are putting it to very good use. So, thank you.
Do you want to present that nice check to our board chair?
This is the next one, actually.
Okay, all right.
I have a lot
I got
of
my
money.
camera ready to
Okay,
get ready.
good.
So.
Okay, thank you. And I see another one, and you would be involved with that as well, the Sodexo Healthy High School Challenge.
Yes, in the fall we ran a Healthy High School Challenge throughout the country. Faribault School District came in 22nd out of all the high schools in the country, and because of that, Sodexo would like to award the Faribault High School $1,000 to do with what they would like. So I'm going to give it here to our gentleman Sam and the board chair.
Get John over there too. We'll get John and Sam over there.
I wrote this check myself.
That's all your checks. They're that big.
Well, that one could keep your checkbook.
It won't fit through the drive-thru.
Student, I'll be in there.
All right, ready? I'll take them. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is for you to take.
There you go. Put that in your backpack.
Thank you very much for everything that you guys do with Sodexo, and we're great to have you. It's great to have you as a partner.
Thank you. Very much.
Well, my 2 cents worth too. Brenda's been terrific to work with, and Sodexo's been nothing but generous to us, and we're very grateful for their generosity.
Mr. Chair, can we take a moment? Does the student representative have any idea what the funds will be used for at the high school?
Yeah, certainly.
For the $1,000, I personally do not know. I was told by my student council supervisor that I would be kind of the student representative in this, all this stuff. So yeah, I'll make sure to ask that question.
Goes back to the student council. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now move to the consent agenda, and these items will be voted on en masse in case a board member wants to pull that off. I'll just make a note that I recommended that we pull retirements off because we tend to want to comment on them and always pull them off the consent agenda, and there are none tonight, but at any rate, I'm always looking for things to put on the consent agenda, so this is kind of against my thing. It might work best. So, is there a motion to consider the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I have one question. It's in 5C. I believe it's additional contracts or extended contracts and activity contracts.
Yep.
And I don't know that I need to vote on it separately. I'm just looking for more information on it, so I don't know if you pull it off.
Yeah, let's pull it off, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, so 5C is pulled off. The motion would then be for A, B, and D. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Wolf, you have a question on 5C.
Yeah, so it's under the activity assignments, and if and the one I'm looking at is the consider the. I'm sorry.
We have to take a roll call
Oh, that's right.
on the consent.
Thank you.
Oh. How do you want to proceed, Mr. Chair?
I'll take a roll call then.
Okay. Just to inform that I asked Kathy to mix the names up this year. So that was random. I had nothing to do with it. So if you don't like it, talk to Kathy. So. Yvette.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Myself, aye. John.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, it passes 6-0.
Okay, now discussion on,
Sorry there, Mr. Chair. Under the activity assignments, consider the approval of hiring Tammy Rosette, assistant dance coach. I believe last time we discussed that, Mr. Duchesne wasn't here. I thought we were led to believe that maybe the Dance Association was paying for that. Maybe they're still paying for that and they're donating the funds to the district and then the district pays it. I'm just looking for clarity there, I guess. Hi, Nicole.
hi, Nicole.
Good evening. Good evening, thank you. So yes, the Dance Association is donating the full cost of Tammy's contract. It runs through us though as an employee, so we put it through our financial software, and then she is one of our employees, but it is paid 100% by the association.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, I'll motion we approve. If that's...
It's been moved, we approve item 5C. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Retirements, oops.
Oh,
Are you going to tell me that had to be a consent thing? Or
roll call on it.
When you go, I mean, we can go back and review Robert's Rules of Order. I don't think that does, but if you want to be safe, it's up to you guys.
do we believe that consent agendas have to be a roll call vote?
I would look it up in Robert's Rules of Order again. In previous districts, we've never had to do a roll call for consent agenda, but again, we can look that up and see.
Okay, we can look at it for next time. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll on item 5C?
We don't have to on that.
Or ask the clerk. You know.
Okay.
It's been approved.
It's been moved and seconded and voted on, and it's carried, and we'll explore further whether that's necessary or not. No retirements, correct? Move on to item 7, Finance Committee. And do we have a report, first of all?
Well, Mr. Chair, I can report that the contracts that are listed in tonight's meeting were approved at the Finance Committee. Okay. And that there is a calendar that includes, I would just note, a Tuesday as opposed to a Monday because of a holiday. People want to take note of that on the calendar.
Okay, thank you. We now would come to the items that to be considered that are action items. I would entertain a motion to consider all 5 items at one time. If it's moved and seconded and voted on, we'll do so. If it isn't moved and seconded on, then we'll go item by item.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on any of these items?
I have.
No, excuse me. Any discussion on whether or not to consider all 5 at once? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to do all 5. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
I have a question regarding item 5.
Okay.
I reviewed the materials about this. My concern is the reallocation of an existing FTE.
Okay, in fairness, Tom, then let's withdraw the motion. We'll go item by item so we have a chance to discuss.
All right.
So that's fair. Okay.
That's fine.
All right. Sorry for that. Item 1, community integration instructor position. Is there a motion to consider?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that particular item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 7.2, excuse me, proposal to add preschool pair at the FEC, excuse me. Is there a motion to consider?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Aye. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 7.3, request for program budget addition, and this is for the Teachers on Call substitute management system and Laserfish, which is a recording system for documents. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I would like just to comment that I think it's going to be very helpful for our district, and I appreciate administration looking into these two programs so we can move forward with technology in this area.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 7.4, Kids World Rate Increase. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Jason, get the second. Who got the second?
Those guys over there.
Tom?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 7.5 is reallocation of existing FTE to meet new fine art standards. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
And is there discussion?
I have a question in regards to this item. When we label it as a reallocation of an FTE, how does that affect the, it's a position that is not currently filled. And I'm certainly in favor of the fine arts improvements that are there, although I question the mandates. But in any case, can someone tell me what happens to that existing position into the future?
Well, for this current fiscal year and for next fiscal year, when we do the budget, we would reallocate those resources, not for this year, for next fiscal year, we'd reallocate the resources for that position, the media specialist, into the new position for art.
Okay, and then it would assume that that's probably an ongoing situation.
An ongoing
going
discussion.
Forward, we have standards to meet, and
yep.
That's going to be an ongoing thing, and so it would require a separate allocation to reinstate the media center position at the middle school.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Kessler, I would bring up, there was quite a bit of discussion at the Finance Committee about this program change and position change. And this new position would include one-on-one time with students, assisting them. I don't know if it's, I'm not as knowledgeable about a media specialist as you are, but it would be working one-on-one with students in regard to technology, how to integrate that into their academics. So I think the Finance Committee was impressed with the scope of the position, including that time with the students, as well as assisting with staff and allowing this fine arts additional staff to be added.
I certainly respect the proposal. It seemed like the staff put a considerable amount of effort into proposing that. My concern is that once the media position is gone from this list, it will not come back. And despite there being some similarities in terms of integration specialists working with students one-on-one, it is not the same job as a media specialist, which would include technology, but in all its forms, not just cyber technologies.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried, 6-1. No need, you don't have to have a roll call.
You don't get the.
Mr. Chair, did you say 6-1 or 5-1?
Oh, 5-1.
I don't think you do.
Usually.
We did in our board meeting, but you don't necessarily have to. If there's you don't automatically have to. Unless somebody calls for the vote. If somebody calls for it, then you'd have to do it.
Usually that's something.
Okay, thank you. Item 7B, enrollment report. Do we have a report? We have the information in our packet. Item 7C2, the financial report. That information was also included. Any board members want more information? And finally, item 7C3, acceptance of gifts and donations. And there's quite a list this month, and we're extremely grateful. And I will quickly go through this. Excuse me. First of all, Deborah and Jeffrey Salmonson, $150 for the lunch program to be applied for balances for families in need. Constant Reinecke, $200 for the lunch program, again, for families in need. James and Amy Wolf, $1,000 for student interest in band and orchestra at Jefferson Elementary. Thrivent Financial, $250 for Discovery Day at Roosevelt Elementary. Quick Trip East Store, 300 cookies for Roosevelt Fine Arts Night. Hy-Vee, $20 gift certificate for Roosevelt Fine Arts Night. Cortner Cavalier, sorry if I didn't get that right, $100 donation for the Rosemont Elementary School. Numerous donations totaling $4,180 for the Middle School Student Council from the Santa and Smiles program. Karen Evans, $61,586.32 to be used by the athletic department to cover the cost personally paid by students competing in varsity athletics. The YMCA of Greater Twin Cities, $1,500 for Youth and Government Startup Grant. Adam Felix, $50 donation for the High School Gay Straight Alliance. Anonymous, $500 donation for the High School Gay Straight Alliance. And the State Bank of Faribault, $100 donation for the robotics program. This being a resolution, I guess I should have asked for a motion. Is there a motion to accept these gifts?
So moved.
Second. Okay. You've heard them. Any discussion?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull out item number 11 and 12 for a separate vote.
Like a new motion or an amendment?
You need a
Would
second
be
for that?
amendment?
It's consent agenda.
We can pull out stuff and it's pull out, we vote on the original, then we vote on.
Well, we do on the consent agenda. However, on a motion that's been moved and seconded, in order for you to change on 11 and 12, I think you'd have to make a motion and you'd have to have a second to do that discussion.
I agree. Yeah, I think you have to have a separate motion and a second to pull those two things out so it gets voted on.
So you move to discuss 11 and 12.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Seeing none, motion is denied. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, can I ask about number 9? It's my understanding that Karen Evans, Dave Jackson's sister, there's going to be 2 donations, and I believe the $61,000 amount was to be dedicated, I believe, to the high school athletic department for what they want to do with it. I believe there's a $100,000 donation coming for what really is responsible for the description here to offset student activity costs.
Yeah,
Am I wrong on that?
No, that's correct. Yep, you're right.
So this...
We'll change that verbiage.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
yeah.
And excuse me if I'm wrong, but I think Mr. Duchesne is going to come to us and give a report on how this money is going to be used. Didn't we ask for that at one time?
He is, yeah. He's planning on that too.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, roll call vote, Mr. Clerk.
Yvette.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Myself, no. John.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, it passes 5-1.
Thank you. We move on to item 7D, which is the compulsory instruction compliance report. Do we have a report on this information? Information was provided in our packets. Okay, are we good?
Yeah, okay, so go ahead, start again.
Okay. All right, so no discussion on that particular report. We move on to item 8HA, Curriculum Committee.
Good evening. The Curriculum Advisory Committee met on Tuesday, January 16th. It was a pretty active meeting. That evening, the middle school brought all their new proposals, talked about the brand new art standards, and really looked at what would be placed in the registration guide. And so the committee really got a chance to hear what that might look like. There are topics such as music and arts and robotics, the innovation specialist. And then the high school also did a presentation, and they talked about the, adding AP World History, so we'll have another World History course. We talked about the teacher cadet program, which we're very excited about, and I think Jamie being in the audience, we did get the grant from Mankato State University to connect with a teacher cadet program, and we'll probably share more about that in the future. And moving to a special ed course that's more of an interactive science course. And so just taking a look at different proposals that will move our district forward. Our curriculum committee really asked some quality questions and basically approved all of those. In the future, we will have an avid proposal coming forward, and our next meeting will be Monday, February 26th. Any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Our next item, excuse me, is the technology report. Ray.
Good evening. I have some items to share with technology. Recently, I published information regarding professional development opportunities in technology. We have classes that will be taking place in February and March. Our digital learning coaches are offering sessions related to technology to all staff after school, and teachers can learn CEU credits for these sessions. We're doing sessions on applications like Planbook, Nearpod, Google, Seesaw. We're also doing a session on using technology to prepare for a guest teacher and using technology to develop collaboration skills. So I'm really excited about offering those sessions. We started planning for our summer projects. Our largest project right now involves replacing staff computers at our elementary buildings. Those computers are about 6 years old, and they have a lot of failing parts on them. So we're looking at moving at faster machines and migrating to the Windows 10 operating system. We're also working on our iPad replacement plan, working on getting those updated. And this is the time of year for E-rate funding, so I'm working on that. This is the funding that we get for our internet and data, our telecommunications funding. So that window opened up this month. And I'm excited to present at the next upcoming board work sessions. We're going to have each building share and showcase technology integration and student engagement and things that they're doing with the devices in school and with technology. So we'll be presenting at the next upcoming work sessions. So I'm excited about that. And lastly, we have another district technology committee meeting coming up here on February 6th. Any questions?
Yeah, Maria, so if memory serves me right, we're currently in our 3rd year of iPads in the district?
3rd year for students and 4th year for staff.
Okay. Could we have, or is there a plan to do, I know we did in the 1st year, a survey at any point in time? I'm really curious about sort of what the adoption rates of using iPads actively in the classroom is for teachers across the district at this point. To get a sense of how ubiquitous the use is. I know, I'm excited to see presentations, and I know we have some teachers who are using it a lot. I'm really kind of curious as to how widely that's being used by teachers across the district. So I was curious if at some point here this year we'll be doing a survey of that type.
We can put together a survey, yeah, we can do that. I've been seeing a lot more with walkthroughs than I've been doing with Colleen in technology, so I think you'll notice a lot positive uses with technology and iPads. But we can do a survey, certainly.
What's the update on the iPads for damage and lost, stolen? Is there?
Right now, in comparison to last year, our numbers are a lot lower. I don't know what to attribute to that. I mean, it could be it's our 3rd year now, so students are being more comfortable with the devices. We have different cases on them, but our numbers are a lot lower right now from past years.
Okay. Do you have just a quick summary of how they keep them over the summer, take them home? Initiative worked out.
Yeah, last year was the first year we let our high schoolers take them home over the summer. It worked really well. I mean, as far as getting things up and running by the first day of school, it worked really well. This year, like with our replacement plan, those are things we need to talk about because we need time to collect all the devices and get the new ones out. And I don't know if we can do it before school ends. It depends because a lot of the students use those devices at the high school for finals. And that only gives us a couple of days turnaround time. So, but that's part of the plan that we're working through.
Anyone else?
Can I just ask, Maria and Mr. Sesker, any update? Did either of you ever reach out to that cybersecurity advisory firm or any update there?
Yeah, we actually had a conference call with or did he show up?
We had a visit from
the vendor. I've had so many meetings lately, I can't keep track of them all. Why don't you summarize what we ended up with?
Well, we had a visit from the vendor, and he kind of shared some of the services that they provide. It was kind of really interesting to hear some of the things that they provide, and at this point, we're just going to have further discussions to see if we want to utilize those services.
I think the one thing that we're really interested in possibly doing is an audit, and the audit's pretty cool, and it tests for security of our system, and it does give us really good feedback on how we can improve our system and what are the things that we need to do in order to maximize our security for our machines. So I think he said between $7,000 and $10,000. He didn't want us to necessarily quote him for that, but for a relatively decent price, it does do a good job of capitalizing on or doing an audit to capitalize on what we have now and what we could be doing. It was good. It was a good meeting.
Thank you.
Is there any way that part of our system can be a standalone system?
Can you repeat that?
This like a standalone system where you can't get it from outside, log into our system and then do ugly things.
Well, we segregate our network, and we do have a firewall in place. We put all the security measures that we can to prevent people coming in.
No, I'm talking about, really separate. Really, there's no way for anybody outside to get into a certain part of our system to, because we have to be connected to the outside system for some stuff, but I don't know if it's even practical to have a standalone system where outside sources cannot get into that system. Is that?
In this day and age, it's really hard to have a standalone system because everything is interconnected. So what you do is you just beef up your security and put things behind a firewall, password protected, encrypted. We segregate our network, so certain things are internal and certain things are allowed external. We do the best we can.
So it's not practical to have two systems. I don't know what.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to chop off the internet.
Because it'd just be like internal. Yep. Part of it's internal.
We do have some systems that are only accessible from inside our district. Yeah.
And it's not connected to the outside?
No. There are some systems that only can be accessed within in our district. Yeah. It depends on the application and how it's used, but nowadays a lot of people work in the cloud and they work from home and they work from multiple locations, so it's really hard.
But there's data that you don't need to get into if you're at home. Private information, or do they?
Well, the information that I work with is more like our student management system, things that they need to access every day.
Outside source accesses that, there's no damage really.
If an outside source got
into into not our financial system, but student. Well,
there's always a risk. There is always a risk, so we just try to be ahead of it and be proactive.
Okay. Having these iPads, I think it was my sophomore year's first year, and the first year we got them, we were able to get games on them. So I could see then where we might have been pretty vulnerable, like with having the Apple Store, and there wasn't a lot of regulation. There's kids, watching YouTube videos during class and stuff like that. But after they got, I think it was my junior year is when they got rid of the Apple Store. So now we have this app called Self-Service, which it's the only apps that we're able to download onto our iPad. So it's like Schoology, Infinite Campus to check your grades, and Quizlet. So it's all educational. None of it's you can't get Facebook, Twitter, anything like that. So I think that it has helped us a lot because it doesn't allow students to have access to social media and other apps on their iPad.
Because I'm concerned with somebody, the way they break in is to get basically money, I would assume, right? To get money or something, again, it's, is that separated? out or not, really? They're Andy's division, where it's,
The finance system is totally separate. Our technology department does not support the finance system. That's on a remote desktop. That's totally separate. It's not housed here. It's housed outside. We do everything we can to protect our network, and we have, security on the workstation, on our firewall, on our infrastructure. So we try to stay on top of that.
have we eliminated the social security numbers for staff and students or not?
We can't by law for some of those things, but just to go back to your point too, Richard, the gentleman that we talked to before would perform an audit. So then we can answer a lot of those questions with, if we're not doing this, then this would be the solution to take care of that. Right now we're basically password protected with the firewall. There are 3 separate systems. The main core system is ISD 656. There's another one, Flight Plan. That's where the teachers and I don't even have the ISD 656 network. And then there's also the other user network. So there's layers to get through to get to that core. But if you want to find any stopgaps, then the board would need to approve that audit. And that would tell us exactly what those items are, from a person, an expert looking outside in, rather than having us try to.
We did purchase insurance to prevent damages from the types of things Richard is asking about.
Yes.
And that's in effect?
That is in effect. It's already been a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions for Maria? Okay, thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next report would be facility with Kevin, but I don't see him.
We just were going to recap what we did today. So that was the meeting, if you want to recap it.
Nicole, I saw you stand up. Is this true that there's, do you
Oh,
want to report
insurance,
something? It says no report.
No,
Insurance committee.
insurance got everybody.
Oh, I skipped that one. I'm sorry. I was
Thank
looking
you.
at wellness. Oh. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So this last fall, early winter, we went through a nice process looking into a new insurance rep for our school district. And so we had some interviews and moved forward hiring One Digital. And our rep from One Digital, his name is George Vanderwheat, excuse me. Since we've hired him, we've had 2 very, very productive meetings, insurance committee meetings with him. He's come in and really torn apart our financial pieces of insurance and explained it all to us and really showed us how our rates are developed, which has been very, very helpful. So he's helping us monitor our utilization and our claims and the money that we're taking in versus the money that is going out to pay our premiums. And so we're really keeping a close eye on that because down the road we want to determine whether or not having a self-insured model for our school district would be beneficial for us. So we're very excited. He's taking us down a very good path. So that's kind of what's going on in our insurance world for us. In addition to that, there was a suggestion at one of our last meeting to have some time with our staff, some educational sessions with our employees. And so since then, we worked with Colleen, and she's been able to carve out some time on our next staff development day to offer a couple sessions for all of our teaching and paraprofessionals and secretary and custodial staff to come to these meetings and learn a little bit more about our insurance and what we have to offer. And so we're excited about that because we're hopeful that that will help get our employees on the right path so that down the road we can try and save some money or at least stabilize our rates.
Nicole, just one question. There's a networking phone call in. I haven't participated in that yet. I need to participate in that. Have you or Andy participated in that yet?
We haven't participated in the actual conference calls yet. We have talked with them, the 2 individuals that do it, we've talked with them separately on a separate conference call. Their focus is really self-insured, and so we're learning a lot, and we're trying to get our own things kind of up to par and educate ourselves on all of our options, and then once we're ready to take that next step towards self-insurance, we'll
and then be sure to include me on that too. I think that'd be great.
Absolutely.
And then one more thing, Mr. Chair, kudos to Mr. Wolf for sitting on the panel at our Minnesota School Board Association conference. He was one of the panel members for the self-insurance and the exploration that we've been doing, and lended some expertise to a lot of people that are looking at going to self-insured in the audience. So thank you, Mr. Wolf.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just say kudos to Nicole and kudos to Colleen. Mr. Curry, you've been in these insurance committee meetings, but if we cannot figure out a way to educate our staff on this stuff, forget it. It's not going to happen. So kudos to the two of you for getting together and finding a way to carve out some time, because it simply has to happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, excuse me, now, try not to skip anything. Facility committee, is Kevin not?
He's here, but I thought we could just fill it in after we had just the discussion. That was the last meeting that we talked about. So if you want to go with?
Well, just briefly, we talked about several items, trying to look ahead to district future needs, space needs. Richard and Chad were there as well if they want to comment, but a little bit of report on what's going on and projects that are coming up. And it was a good meeting. Lots of good ideas.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And special services, Rob?
So this is the time of year that I like to report on our special education child count. Every December, the Department of Education takes a look at our data that we submit through MARS, and I compile with my assistant the numbers of kids who are counted for who are in special education. This is in your board packet too, so you can look at that as a PDF. The first is a graph for the past 5 years of where our child count is and the kids we actually serve. The blue line is our child count, and that's any student who has an IEP whose parents live in Faribault. So there's quite a bit, there's about 100 more students with IEPs whose parents live in Faribault than we actually serve in our schools. The green line is the number of students, special education students that we serve within the Faribault Public Schools. We talked last year about the big jump from 2015 to 2016. At that time, we joined the Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative, and we moved 36 kids who were in our school district were moved to the cooperative. So technically, while we are still part of the cooperative and they are still very much students that we take care of, they're run through the cooperative rather than our own public school system. But when I looked at this year, I saw that there were 100 more, so we did a little bit more digging. The next graphs, or the next charts on here are a year-by-year comparison of our child count. So all the charts are meant to be the same so that you can have some comparison information if you're interested. They all contain the total enrollment for the district. They all contain a count of how many early childhood students we have. And they even have a change from the prior year with a plus or a minus for our early childhood and our total enrollment. They all contain our total special education child count, and they all contain how many students we serve. So I'm not going to talk about 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm going to move down to the last page, the purple one, which is 16, 17, because that's our current year, and that's the year I'm most attracted to right now. As Andy has been indicating on her enrollment reports, overall, the district enrollment is going down. Last year, between Decembers, we lost 11 general education students. Early childhood, for the first time since I've been here, from December to December, we actually did not gain any students. You may recall last year and the year before, we had gained a great number of students in our early childhood in special education. This is the first year where it was 100 last year, and it's 100 this year from December to December. And so good or bad, that's where it's at. As far as students served, we continue to remain about stable at about 600, a little over 600 of students actually served. But then I wanted to know where the extra 100 students were that were parents who were living here, but students who weren't attending our public schools. So I asked my assistant to break that apart by where they were at the bottom. It shows a majority of them are at, if they're not at the co-op, a majority of them are at the charter schools that are located within our district or within Northfield. And that accounts for a great many of them. We have 43 students at the STEM school, 22 at Discovery, and then 20 at Near Strand. So when I look at numbers and I look at things like that, I think that maybe there's something that the charter schools are doing for the special education students, or there's something that's attracting some of our special education students there. So that's someplace that we're going to investigate to see if we can encourage some of those families to come back. And
Rob, up that 43, you know, with their total population, that's a high percentage.
It is. It is. And I also have them broken apart by disability. It is. I can't, yes.
Do they have the specialists to cover that?
Yeah, they have to. They're required by law, just like we are, to have special education teachers who are able to provide services for all of their students, just like we are for our students. And so they have a director of special services, they have special ed teachers, they have speech teachers. They do subcontract some services from us. We have some early childhood services and some autism services that they contract from us because they don't have a high number of autism or early childhood students, but yes, they're required to. And so they're serving those students just like we would be serving them. Yeah.
Rob?
Yeah.
Do the private schools, FLS in Divine Mercy or BA, do they have any of this?
They do. They don't show. They show as our students because we actually serve them. Okay. We serve the special education, so they're on our child count. Okay. And we have roughly about 30 students who attend the non-public schools who are transported during the school day to attend special education classes on our campuses. A majority are in the elementary age, and then we had a couple last year at the high school, but not many at the high school. Yeah. So that's an overall picture. In general, our numbers are fairly steady. Our staffing has also been steady to reflect this. We're not losing students. I left my white sheet over there with, I calculated the percentages. Right now, last year we were serving 11.4% of our whole population was identified with having an IEP. This year it's 11.7%, which is really not much difference. The state average is typically around 12 to 13%, so we would be a little under the state average, but still in that same realm of we're probably identifying typically the same number of students that they are across the state. So, any more questions about the child count and those? You can certainly look by disability, by school building, and see if you're curious about that. That's on those documents too.
One quick question: if STEM school or a family determined that they wanted to use SubSec, would they have to re-enroll in Faribault, or can they go directly from STEM to SubSec?
They would have to re-enroll in the Faribault public schools, and the Faribault public schools at that point would make the determination of whether or not we could serve them within our district, or whether or not we would want to refer them to SubSec. Typically, we like to try them in our system first because we generally have a lot more resources and a lot more people to be able to meet some of their needs. I think a lot of what attracts people to the charter schools there's not as, because the buildings have less students in them, there's not as much transition, there's not as much crowdedness in the halls. I think that's what attracts them, and so a lot of times when you have a disability, all those things are very distracting, and so to be in a school with less of those distractions, they really do want that small setting. But yeah, they would have to enroll here first, and then we would make the determination of whether or not to place place.
The only other option that they would have is they would apply to SevSec as a separate school, and then SevSec would determine whether or not they would let them in.
Correct.
It would be like
Yeah,
someone
they
from
could join the
Minneapolis or
cooperative.
something
Right.
like that.
It'd be a higher school.
Rob, so your caseloads are pretty steady?
Yeah,
You're comfortable with
Yeah.
what's existing now for this school year?
Right, we have a range, and typically the range in elementary is 16 to 20 students on a caseload, and we average pretty closely within that range. And at the high school, it's 18 to 22. And I'll relook at that now in February and March so that we can make budget adjustments if we need to. If a student moves from the elementary to the middle school or middle school to high school, we make staffing adjustments at that time. But it's been fairly steady, and it's been fairly good for the special ed teachers to have that range. I find that our range is roughly, it's lower than what we would have in the metro, in Apple Valley or is where I live, and in West St. Paul where I used to work. Their caseloads were generally higher. In the region though, in the region 9, that's pretty typical caseload, 16 to 18. Yeah.
Just if I can comment, thank you to Rob. He's done a great job with our special education department. Thank you for the teachers, but especially thank you to the paraprofessionals. As you may know, this is Paraprofessional Week, and the majority of our paraprofessionals are special ed, but this is for all paras that we serve in our district. I know Nicole has done a nice job with recognizing them, and I know Rob and Patty have done a great job of recognizing the paras, so thank you to the paras.
Yep. The second thing I wanted to talk about was I got a cold call from the Minnesota Department of Education, and usually those make me very nervous. But it was the people writing the English Language Learner Companion Manual. And what the manual does is it's a description of what to do if you have an English language learner who's not making adequate progress, and how do we transition them to possibly having an IEP. And it goes through kind of step by step what the process is and what process you should follow. And the Department of Education asked Faribault, my department, and Sam's department to take a look at the draft of the companion manual that they have so that we could help them determine whether or not it was going to be usable for the greater Minnesota before they make a final copy of it. And so we were very excited to get that phone call, and my school psychologists and case facilitators are going to be spending February some time looking at that companion manual and seeing how it reflects what they do with the students that we work with. So that's a pretty exciting thing. It does come with a small amount of money to pay for the extra hours that they're going to take to look at the manual. So that was some good news too. So I think it's good that we're being recognized for our not only special education but our early learning, or our English language learning program, and that the state is asking us for advice, which is always nice to hear. So,
Rob,
yeah.
Related topic, but not really, but
yeah.
I talked to Mr. Sesker about, through community ed, of a program for the public for education on the autism spectrum.
Yep.
And it's just general, and I don't know where it'd be held, whatever, a good place for parents, or anybody out there. And I'll speak for myself because I have a grandchild on actually 2 on the autism spectrum, and education, I guess that's the key, is I want to know more about it.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's a huge topic, I know.
And that's on my docket of things to do, my list of things to do. And working through community ed is a great idea. I would probably go through, that's a great option I hadn't thought of.
Can you get an outside speaker?
Yeah, my thought was to bring in an outside speaker and have it through our we have a SEEK committee, which is a parent special education advisory, and have them sponsor the event in the Falcon room, have it free of charge to parents, and have someone come in to talk about autism and what autism is and ways to work with students who are identified as autism, or other disabilities as well, because some of the disabilities have some relation to each other. But yes, it's on my list of things to do.
Yeah, I like to be involved
scheduled.
in that. Keep me in the loop. I would appreciate that.
We sure will. Yep.
Or any other board member that wants to be in it too, of course.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Excuse me. The next item is a policy committee report, and I'm not sure anybody's going to report. There are several items for us to consider. I know I was not at that meeting. And
Yeah, Andrea was at it, but she's not here today.
Okay. Perhaps we'll move right on to the items. And there are three. I'll entertain a motion to consider all three with one motion.
So move. Second?
Moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And the policies we are approving are investment and the procurement and procedure policies manual and unpaid meal charges. Is there any discussion on any of these three items?
I think we already approved it, right?
Hey, we already proved it.
I kind of approved doing three at once, but I don't want to deny the chance to, I don't know, maybe I'll quit doing that
No.
match. Okay. Anybody want to talk about any of those three items? Hearing no discussion, is there, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, now, first reading, board members and public, just be aware that the policy, or the committee looked at these, and I reviewed the minutes. There was one or two that didn't make it, so these have been approved for the first reading by the committee. And as I understand it, they are all revisions and changes in language that make our policies coincide with the state school board and other policies. All right, anyway, 303 is the superintendent selection.
We really don't need that policy. I don't think that's going to be necessary.
We don't need it? Okay.
Say something about not allowing them to retire? I think that's what,
Yeah.
that's what the policy says.
All right,
Oh, yeah.
we can change it. Okay.
Okay.
There shall be no change in superintendent. I see that here.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, didn't it further define the duty of the school board to select superintendent?
It just had very minimal changes on it, so, yeah.
You're safe in the superintendent's
Yep.
house. Veterans preference, mandated reporting of child neglect or physical or sexual abuse, enrollment of non-resident students, and violence prevention. So that's for the first readings, and we will consider these for action at our next meeting. We move on to item 9, and that is approval of individual employment aid agreements. And I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that. This is a action item. Is there a motion to consider the agreements?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
Where's Nicole? Oh, could she come up? Simple question, over 2 years, what's the average increase?
The average per person?
No, just the, well, did you group these a little bit or not really?
No.
Well, yeah, you did.
Well,
I could certainly help with that, Nicole. I would say community education coordinators, it's a total 2-year package of 6.093. Directors and coordinators, total 2-year package percent increase of 6.093. Cabinet directors, total 2-year package percent increase 6.094. Principals, total year package percent increase of 6.093. IT technicians, total 2-year package percent increase 6.094. I didn't realize the list was so long. ASL interpreters, total 2-year package percent increase of 6.09. And administrative assistant, superintendent, and director of teaching and learning, total 2-year package percent increase of 6.093. Audio and visual technician, I guess those weren't brought together, but it looks like year 1 was 3.50, year 2 wage increase 3.02. Early intervention specialist, a wage increase in year 1 of 3.50 and a wage increase in year 2 of 3.02. Total two-year package for the early intervention specialist is 6.093.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, administrative assistant, comma, superintendent and director of teaching learning is administrative assistant to the superintendent. Mr. Sesker's contract
is separate.
Is separate. So we're not trying to sneak through a new contract.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice try,
Yeah,
Todd.
I know. Try everything.
I tried.
Yeah.
So what did we have budgeted again for this?
2.5% is what's in the budget for this current year, and then the budget for next year isn't yet set.
What was the year before, like 2.5, so about 5% basically, or not?
Well, last year we would have had 3% budgeted, but this year is set at 2.5.
My recollection is previous years was 3%. I mean, it was 6% over 2 years.
So would you say this is over budget or not? Because you're sort of split a little bit.
It is over budget when we consider the adopted budget that you adopted in June.
Okay.
For expenditures.
Right.
And is the revenue budget
The
on
revenue
budget or is it under budget?
The revenue budget will come in over budget, so we will be receiving more revenue than we anticipated.
Is my understanding correct that these salary adjustments maintain our position relative to our neighboring districts? Do you have information regarding that?
Yes, that's a pretty good summary. We did look a lot at our big 9 neighbors to see where we all fell in line, and so we're very mindful of that when we do set these salaries.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we approve these contracts. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, school calendar. I believe Colleen is going to address the, first of all, is there a motion to consider the approval of the 2018-19 school calendar?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and we will now have discussion.
Okay. Just very quickly, if you take a look at calendar 1, it is very similar to this school year. In this calendar, the difference is that Christmas is 2 weeks long, and spring break, again, is the 18th to the 22nd. So the length of the school year is pretty much, or the length of Christmas is what is different compared to calendar number 2. And so spring break at the same time. And then you have calendar number 3, and I kind of wanted to focus in on that. Calendar number 3 is unique in nature. It has the elementary starting 2 days later. In order for the teachers to meet with the parents, like a parent-teacher conference, so the elementary students can come in, meet the teacher, see what the classroom looks like, quickly do maybe our DIBELS assessment or any assessment that we need done at that time, and really kind of get that one-to-one connection right from the beginning. And so those first 2 days will be set aside for elementary staff to meet with the parents, and they will start full-time on a regular basis on Thursday the 6th. The other thing that you'll notice in all of these calendars is that the middle school and high school will hold conferences in October. That allows just kind of a little bit of a different change for our elementaries who have gone to standard-based report card. They wanted to move their parent-teacher conferences to after the report card, which is in November. So that will be a change. You'll see Christmas being like a week and 2 days long. You'll also see that the early outs are not in calendar number 3. And it was a suggestion that was made, and we did turn around and survey our staff, asking them would they prefer early outs or 2 days of curriculum days. And their preference is just to really go to that curriculum day instead of those 6 early outs. I think it's going to be a lot better for our parents too. It's not a half a day, it really is a full day. Our students do gain time from this because we're cutting a little bit of time. We're not equaling out the amount of early out hours that there would be. We're cutting back a little bit to help ensure that our students get more time at school. And let's see, what else is the other change? So you'll see those three, and I'll share with you. It's November 5th would be a curriculum day. No, February 18th is in a green because it's typically a staff development day, but basically it's a curriculum day. You'll also see that March 4th is a curriculum day, so that's an exchange for those early outs, so 6 early outs. The other thing that you will notice, spring break obviously will stay where it's at, but we will let the seniors out 2 days earlier so that we can ensure that graduation happens the first weekend in June. Is a preference typically, my understanding is a preference in Faribault to have our students graduate at that time. It's also a typical situation to let your seniors out early. You can do graduation practice during that time, and it's just, you know, kind of a typical thing. Anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, the one thing, Martin Luther King Day, we didn't have kids or teachers. Next year we're going to have a teacher workshop, and that is a change too.
Thank you.
So Colleen, I want to clarify. So you are eliminating the early releases. Mm-hmm. So we are getting, which I preach for more time, student teacher, right? So there's more hours.
Right, we're exchanging, so typically speaking, our early outs is on the average of 3 hours, and so, you know, there were 6 of them, and we basically, instead of taking 3 curriculum days, we narrowed that down to 2, so that our students would gain, what was it, 4 hours?
Yeah, well, I just say 1 day, it's easier.
Okay. And so the students would gain a little bit more time, but at the same time, we still have time to train our staff and to look at our student data and et cetera. So it's kind of it is a swap. We did ask our staff, we did survey our staff, because this will ultimately result in, if we vote for calendar number 3, there's gonna have to be a memorandum of understanding because of the way our contract is worded. And so at this point, from what we can see, almost 85% of our staff preferred this over the 6 early outs, and I think our parents will too. If I were going to guess at that, you know, trying to come home in a half a day, meet your students at home is, I would think as a parent would be much more difficult than knowing that whole day is off.
Colleen, what was the feedback from the elementary staff with pushing the start date back a couple days and having those pre-meetings?
You know, we did not have the conversation with the elementary staff. We had the conversation with, you know, about parent-teacher conferences. However, I can tell you that I had a meeting set up prior to this calendar with the kindergarten group at Lincoln requesting 5 days of meeting with parents, and first grade, 5 days of meeting with parents prior to school. So I do think that, you know, because you get to meet the parents on a one-to-one, and most districts do this. Yeah. You know, I can speak for myself where I go in a day in August, to be honest with you. And I get to meet the teacher, my child gets to know the teacher, she gets assessed. It's just it's just more comforting for the child, and so that's kind of the way we're looking at it.
Is that a mandatory meeting or an optional meeting?
Those will be mandatory because our staff is here at that time.
No, but I mean, what if the parents don't go in?
We're very fortunate in our elementaries to have a 90+% rate of parent-teacher conferences, so I'm not overly concerned about that. However, we have talked about the possibility of maybe allowing our elementary teachers to do it in August and swapping those days out so that we can separate the cultural liaison time and, you know, also helping to ensure that all of our parents get
there. Excuse me, it's become a very popular concept, and some districts would move those conference days to the 22nd and 23rd of August, way before. Then the staff doesn't come in on those 2 days, but it's more relaxing. When you think about the stress on parents and students and teachers, when they all come in on one day at the same time, rather than having a half hour to sit with a student and the parent, talk about their concerns, talk about their concerns for their child, their concerns for our programs, teachers getting to know the kids, welcoming them, distributing materials, showing on their desk, it makes for a much less stressful first day of school. So, and I think it's been discussed that there would not be the mass open houses at the elementary.
Correct.
Then.
We will not do
And
the big
those
open house.
hours possibly would be used to make up some conferences, conference times, because those open houses, we seem like we need to do them, but they are a gigantic mess. I mean, everybody's happy to see everybody else, but what's accomplished is not as much as you would in the other one.
This is very innovative. I mean, this, you know, a lot of districts are moving in this direct, you know, have moved in this direction. Very innovative. Kind of excited about this one. So we'll see.
Is there any other big 9 schools doing this? I mean, where did this concept come from?
Well, there is places like Rochester. I mean, yeah, definitely other districts are doing it. I know that Rochester is definitely one because we were talking about that today.
I think Owatonna is moving towards it, right? That was the article.
Yeah, Medford does it. Yep, Owatonna is moving towards it. There's a couple of big 9 schools that are moving towards it. Mankato.
Rosemont.
So, yeah.
Mr. Benty, are you willing to say goodbye to the seniors a couple days early?
I am fine with that.
I'll just make if it becomes an issue, there's a lot of ways you can approach it. You can dismiss the seniors from those days, put your practices in there and those kinds of things. Teachers might say, well, wait a minute, they have to take finals, I have to make 2 finals. That can happen. I taught with this system for 15 years as a classroom teacher, and I had both juniors and seniors, and making a final for the seniors that I gave 2 days early was not an issue. You can also say, if you don't have to take the final, if it isn't going to change your grade, you don't have to come. And that becomes an incentive for them to kind of tie things up at the end. And then finally, it makes a huge difference in the climate of the building the last 2 days to have the seniors gone.
And your secretaries will be elated. So.
All right, go ahead.
So when you say like getting rid of the early dismissals, and you're saying like students are gaining, what are they gaining? Like, so you're saying an extra day, like with their one-on-one teachers, or what are they gaining?
So, you know, typically we had early releases, and they, you know, they were 3 hours long, and we had 6 of them. So, you know, we had the 18, and now we're just instead we're taking the two days. We're exchanging that for 2 days, which obviously is less hours.
It would be like 172 days. Normally, isn't a teaching year. Now they have 173. Oh. So it'd be 173 student days.
All right.
Colleen, does the high school still have a late start?
Yeah.
When, under calendar 3 under this
So at this point in time, we have not, and that is a discussion for next year. We are going to hold on to that. At this point, yes, the teachers are the high school on Thursdays do their PLC, so there is a little bit later start for that, and the elementaries and the middle school do it 3:30 to 4:30. But we wanted to tackle one thing at a time, or you know, we felt this was enough at the moment, but we will be bringing that discussion to the table next school year for the following year.
So there's 3 options on here. Is calendar 3 the recommendation? Or that's just got the most changes that you're talking about?
Yeah, our recommendation is calendar number 3.
You're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, how do you respond to parents after Labor Day, our kids go to school? How do you respond with that?
That they go to school?
Yeah, they're not in school.
Well, they will be coming in to do, you know, obviously to meet the teacher and to do an assessment. I think there's some real benefit to sitting down with the teacher one-on-one and having that, you know, here's our classroom, welcoming that child, kind of easing the anxiety. And I think most of those parents and most of our parents will really appreciate that. You know, it is still stressful. You've had 3 months, you know, almost 3 months off, and now you're coming to a brand new teacher's classroom. You just don't have that connection. And, you know, when you're one-on-one, you know, teachers can do a great job of connecting right away.
So there'd be assessments done in those 2 days?
Yeah, we would do something, yeah, right. We would do a quick, probably a quick DIBEL or a reading assessment. We wouldn't do a lengthy assessment by any means, just kind of a quick, like a dipstick to see where they're at, where they're starting. Kind of getting them, you know, ready right away to go. Anybody want to add anything? Some of you have had this experience, I'm assuming. Or, no?
Any further discussion? We would need a motion to approve calendar number 3.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on calendar number 3? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Clint.
Yep, and we do want to thank for the people that really helped us with this calendar. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I'll just make one more comment. I do think there's a lot of families that are gonna appreciate graduation being that first weekend instead of 9 days later. So it essentially kind of gives them a full extra week of summer. So I think that's great.
Okay, we have come to item 9C, consider approval of a survey by Springstead. It's an action item, and first of all, I would entertain a motion to approve that item.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now is discussion. I see Mr. Smith is here. I'm not sure if we need him to speak to the issue. Any discussion?
I would like him to come up and discuss it, or
Good evening.
not just a maybe general overview for the public and for the board again.
Sure. Thanks for having me tonight and considering this proposal. The proposal is to do a stratified scientific random sample survey for the district, where we would take a look at your current voter file and determine what the makeup of that voter file is in terms of age of voters, homeowners versus renters, education level, a variety of factors, and then the 300 people that we would survey, we would try to match that demographic group as closely as possible to your voter file. It's a calling survey, so phone calls are made to respondents, and we guarantee that number of calls will be completed. There's always questions about number of calls and if people are willing to answer the phone in regards to this type of survey. And this process takes about 8 to 10 weeks from the time we're engaged with an approval of a proposal to a time we're back here presenting the results. So if it's approved tonight, we begin working immediately with Mr. Sesker and staff here to develop that survey. The survey is developed by you as a district. We'll kind of build a framework to start with, but it's your survey. We want to be asking the questions that you need to be asked within your community. So I would comment there, a secondary proposal is post-election analysis. As I mentioned before when I was here, it's really the look back at what happened at the last election. We take a look at, again, the voter file record from the Secretary of State to determine who showed up. And really it's to give you an idea of, as you were getting the message out to voters, was there a particular segment of your population that maybe didn't show up on election day that you were figuring was going to be there? We obviously don't know who voted yes or no, but we can give you a breakdown of what demographic groups showed up for that election and whether it was a level that would maybe provided you with more success if you had a greater level of participation.
Mr. Sesker, so I'm reading the attachment, and what is the rationale for cabinet to recommend the 22,990 and not the post-election assessment?
That's what we'd been talking about it. I know that there really isn't a rationale for it. We just try to keep it as a minimal price. We thought if the board found value in the post-election, we'd be more than supportive of that too. And I think it actually includes a voter file too. Both proposals we'd have to look at the voter file, wouldn't we? Yeah. So I missed the $750. So only thing that we present to the board is if you want to add into your motion, I guess you'd have to revise it to include the certain components of the survey. We kind of left it wide open for you. So no rationale other than that.
I don't know if you're ready for approval or if there's further discussion.
Well, so you're asking us to approve the $22,990 and not the PEA 2,700 and 750?
We would ask the 750 be part of that too.
Okay.
That's what the cabinet is, but if you want to do the post-election results, then we kind of left that one up to the board. We're trying to do a collaborative deal here.
The post-election results, is that in part of the, you include something in the survey of that, or is that just examining the votes?
That's really a totally separate item that's looking at that past election and who showed up.
Is it in a survey that you formed? No, okay.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I guess I would ask who made the motion if they intended it to include
I don't
the
think
total
there's been a
cost
motion
as
made yet,
presented.
right?
We just moved to consider this, and I would entertain a motion for a specific amount.
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
would make a motion to approve the 26,440 that would include the post-election results that in the voter file and the survey.
Is there a second to that?
I would second that.
Okay. Any further discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, of course, looking back, of course, maybe we should have done this before, but we voted not to do it, and we, I take full responsibility for the vote I take.
You share it. I was with you, yeah.
Yeah, everybody, we were just all happy, and, but, when you presented the stuff about where we would fall with the survey and stuff, and, you know, we spending, you know, $26,000, then you come back and say, gee, the results are maybe below 50%. Okay, and basically you said, don't go out for a vote, it's gonna fail. But then we've spent $26,440 on it. And, you know, the public's not gonna be happy. We're spending money. It should have been before, but again, we didn't do that.
I would think the questions, I think, haven't been formed yet. Am I misunderstanding that? That you would work with the cabinet as far as the types of questions they would ask?
Right.
So I think they would be more, maybe more complex than, you know, would you vote yes or no type of questions. So it would give us more of a picture about what we could target.
Right.
Versus whether we do it at all.
But again, you know, what's the results of, you know, 3-1 it went down. And you can give a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into that because I think we all did a nice job and, you know, whatever on this. But again, to vote to spend $26,440 of taxpayers' money on maybe they've sent us a message. And I don't know where we go from here at all. But of course, that's with, you know, with the survey. But again, maybe they did, you know, send us a message like maybe we don't want this. I don't know. Too bad we can't turn the clock back, have this survey a year ago,
Right.
about like that, about a year ago, and it just, it's, you know, the feedback, why are we spending money when maybe they've sent us a message?
Sure.
I don't know if it's true or not, but while they did vote 3-1, you know, don't tax us.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'll comment. I think those are good points, Richard. I think one thing my response to that from a community member, and I think there'll be some of that in the community for sure, is twofold. One of which is that the needs, in spite of the fact that there was a no vote, the needs that were there are real. We as a board were elected to serve those needs, and we need to, we can't simply ignore that they're there. So we have to do some way of doing that. And I think your point is well taken that I would have, if we had done this before, we perhaps would have done something differently in that previous question that we brought to the district. I think all we know is that they voted down the package we brought to them, not whether or not they would have supported any package. We have, as a community, you know, I've been involved, and before this one, this was now my 5th time going to the community to ask for resources for our schools, and 3 of those passed, 1 of those didn't. And so this community has said to me many times, we'll support the schools, but clearly the message that's been sent to me now is we'll support the schools if we believe it's worthwhile. So my biggest argument for doing this is we need to figure out what the community thinks is worthwhile so that we don't waste their time and waste, to my mind, if we go forward with another one that's going to get voted down, the waste to us is much larger than $26,440 in real money, but for me, particularly as I think about the time that we put in, that our superintendent puts in, that many staff put in. You know, our superintendent, Andy, as you know, we're at many, many meetings for months on end. We should not go down that road again unless we know there can be some support. And messages I've gotten over my years of experience on this board is the community will support it as long as they believe that it's worthwhile. And so our job with this survey is to figure out what do they think is worthwhile. And I think if we do that, the money will be well spent.
In my conversations with citizens, I've had both favorable support for this idea and some that question, again, the expense. It is I think I'm agreeing with Jason in his points here, but I would like to preface this that if we do vote to go through with this survey, that we spend some time prior to the survey explaining what it is we're asking for, whether that be a newspaper article or something, so that I got some fairly vocal comments about, well, what are you spending that money for? And I tried to work with that. I suggested that they contact Chad or Mr. Sesker, having been part of that, and Richard, having been part of that process. So I'd like to just stand in favor of Jason's comments, but also the fact that I think we need to educate our community about what it is, why we need what we're asking for, and why we're surveying to try and determine specifics in that regard.
Mr. Chair, could I, a couple comments?
Absolutely.
First, to Mr. Olson's comment about doing it before the last time, we can't change that.
No.
We quite often end up doing surveys for districts that are in the situation that you are in right now, where you had a failed effort, and now you're trying to determine were there parts of that proposal that garnered support, and were there parts that maybe caused it to fail?
Which I'm not going to get into because we're not going to point fingers, whatever, but I know that calls to me, and they favored security and safety.
Yep.
You know, we would have voted for that. They mentioned that because it was a small figure, I think $4.5 million. But, you know, and then he mentioned about, of course, the event center and why are you tearing down schools and, you know, the whole thing and increased taxes. So 4.5 compared to
87
million, but take out the event for 66 million. Yeah, you know, safety and security. In fact, Tennessee, some kid walked in with a gun. Kentucky.
Yeah.
You know, could we have stopped that here or there if they would have done something? I don't know, but again, it's they do favor security. Maybe we have to take this in stages over a long period of time. I just don't know about that, but like I said, still, number one is safety and security. The board knows it, Todd knows it. We have to secure our buildings before a disaster happens. What happened in Kentucky, you know, and, you know, whatever that takes. And I've been thinking about this, and I don't know, I'm going to offer a friendly amendment, is that I think, what, 26,000 that we hire a security consultant to go through all our buildings in detail, even beyond what the architects, and to really analyze just that one thing, not anything else, just that, and then try to bring that to maybe discuss that with the public. Just a one item, we're not talking about anything else. So that's,
And Mr. Wolf, I agree. I believe you made the motion to accept that friendly amendment.
No,
You need
sir.
a second.
I think that's a completely different conversation than this proposal.
Okay, thank you. I, for one, I'm trying to think of if you brought a bond issue to me in the future and didn't have an idea of what the community can afford and what they support, scientific idea as best we can. I'm not sure I could support it. So I fully agree with the survey and hope that we learn some information, not only about the bond issue, but also about our district. I've been through this. I got sick of getting edits to questions. The process that they go through with you folks is extensive.
Yes.
And it's a lot of fine tuning, a lot of nuance in the questions, but it pays off if it's done right. So I encourage that same process now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Further discussion?
Is there amendment on it? Was there, I made a motion for an amendment and.
It either died for a lack of a second, which I don't know is required, but the person that made the motion did not accept your friendly change to his motion.
And Mr. Chair, I'm certainly willing to entertain a friendly conversation once his vote's done, because I think his proposal makes sense. I just think this is a different conversation.
Okay.
So whether it's in 30 seconds or 3 minutes, I'm willing to have that conversation.
Okay, any further discussion? We probably should back up and certify the amount on this that we're for, and I believe, did we do that already?
I mentioned the 26,440.
And I think that was seconded?
That's what I seconded, yep.
Is there any further discussion?
I do ask for a roll call, please.
Okay. No further discussion. Mr. Clerk?
Okay, Yvette.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Myself, no. John?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, it passes 5-1.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, other items of information, Sam.
So at the, what's currently going on in our school systems is that the second semester has started for the high school, so most students are starting, for upperclassmen, it's new classes usually, different classes, different teachers. Underclassmen usually typically have same classes but different teachers and different subjects, so students are getting a kind of new start for the semester, second semester. The DECA club is sending, I believe, 34 students to the state competition out of, I believe, the 44 that competed. So really good results there. Lots of medal winners, so they had a great result there and are competing starting March 4th through the 6th at the DECA state competition. Student council, we're just getting prepared for kind of, we have a March Madness week where we're getting students involved in activities and kind of having a big spirit week at the high school. That is all I can think of as of right now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Board members?
This afternoon, I went to the high school to see the children's theater production. With my daughter was in it, and we were there with Roosevelt and some students from McKinley. And I've been to the production before, but at night when it was for the adults, I've never been there with the kids. And it is a whole level, different level of amazing when you are in that auditorium filled with 500 elementary school students watching this production. They just love it. The moment when the dragon is coming out and you have 500 kids screaming to the actors on stage to watch out for the dragon, it is incredible. I've seen lots of great theater at our high school, but that was a uniquely amazing experience for me to see today. So great job to the entire theater program at the high school. I think anybody who wants to see great things going on to the school district, that would be one more of many great places to be.
Mr. Chair, I had the opportunity to attend the Martin Luther King breakfast, and the keynote speakers was a group of students who made speeches, and we had an excellent representation of our students there. And I neglected to ask, I don't know what staff organized that through the high school, the speakers at the Martin Luther King breakfast?
That was Sam, wasn't it?
Sam.
Mainly Sam.
All right, it was a great group of students. They really were impressive for Faribault Public Schools.
Mr. Chair, I'll just tell the group that you and I, at the invitation of Mr. Joe Sage, the 9th grade academy director, in December we attended their first awards ceremony, and these kids, it seems like they're digging this, and the staff is engaged, and Mr. Benty and Mr. Peck and Mr. Sage and whoever else helped put it on, they did a great job. And I believe they have what's actually called an Academy Awards.
Yep.
Coming up on February 2nd, which is a lunch, and might even be some formal attire, and they're making a big deal of it. So seems like it's going well, and once again, thank you to the board and the administration for moving that program forward. So,
Mr. Chair, I think maybe Chad or even Mr. Sesker can update you on the resolution I brought before the MSBA delegation, which was voted down, but we're going through the political route, and between Sam, Oak, and Todd, they've got some information together, which we're reviewing, and we're going to forward it on to our state rep and state senator. So we're not giving up. That's basically the limit the testing for immigrants.
Yep.
So that's so we'll try that.
Yep.
We'll try that. We'll try anything.
Any other board members?
Mr. Chair, I have one follow-up question. When is a good time to have that conversation that Mr. Olson referenced? I just don't know, and if it's on here or if it's somewhere else. But
Facilities Committee?
As part of the WOLD work, didn't they look at it through a security lens? I know they're not. We didn't hire them to look at that specifically, but I believe that was part of their work already.
Yeah, through a general scope. The difference is with that is that we're going back to the drawing board, so we may not address all the security pieces that they've asked about or talked about, depending on how this moves forward with our facility piece. So I mean, myself, I appreciate Mr. Olson's suggestion on bringing something like that. I also like the idea of having an audit for our cybersecurity, which to me is just as important as the physical security aspect of it. I agree. I think that through the facility committee, that'd be a great place to have it and have that discussion next month. It comes up in 3 weeks, so we could wait and have it at that time. And we can, that'll give us time to take a look at some prices too, to see if there's there are some companies out there that actually do that.
I would appreciate it coming from the committee, just then you'd have a chance to discuss it maybe before it came to us. I'm certainly not an expert in that field. I trust your expertise.
I think that's, thank you. I think it's great that it just doesn't die on the tree here.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Any other board members? Superintendent Sesker.
Yeah, Richard kind of stole my thunder on the resolution there. That's okay though.
Okay, go ahead.
That's right.
Go ahead.
I have sent that off to Representative Daniels and Senator Jasinski to take a look at, and we've created some criteria of what we think is a better reflection on who can take the test and who should take the test, and all those definitions for our students, particularly our SLIFE kids, the students who are coming to America that haven't had any formal education and they don't speak English. So, so that resolution is out there. I'd be more than happy to send it to the other board members if they want to see it. I'll get that to you if you want to. But it's basically the same resolution that you passed back in October.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Could you send that information to all the board members so they're fully informed of what we're doing?
Yep, I can do that.
Especially with the data with Jason, he can look at the data.
Yeah, it's good data.
Also, I made a contact with the head of the Senate Education Committee. It's a lady.
Good.
And she's interested. I told her about the process we're going through, and she's very interested in that. I can get you the name and email to that.
Sounds great. Appreciate that. A few of us attended the MSBA conference. There was some inclement weather, which kind of restricted some of us, but it still went very well. It was a good conference. The Martin Luther King breakfast, as you mentioned, was a really big hit, especially with the students that spoke there. I had a meeting with Dick Houston. Now I'm looking at Jessica. I haven't told you this, but I've got to have a meeting with you as a result of an idea that came from Dr. Houston. He had a really cool idea that we can start with one of the elementary schools that I think we'll take a look at. All-star breakfast for the middle school. If anybody had a chance to attend that, our guest speaker was Mr. Wolf. He did an outstanding job with that speech. And we had about 100 kids that were recognized with their parents for doing outstanding jobs. They're all referred to by teachers. So a very cool program that Kelly and Mike put on with the help of a lot of staff members. And also, Sodexo does a nice job of helping with the food. FCTV, I interviewed our 2 newly acquired administrators at the high school, our Dean of Students, Mr. Sage, and then also Mr. Peck. If you catch FCTV, I don't know if you've seen that yet or not. Well, actually, I think we got one more screening process. Troy Temple is editing some of the commentary that we had in there and making it look real professional and things like that. But that should be out here pretty soon. They did a good job, Mr. Benty. They didn't take it to you too badly. Big 9 superintendent meeting yesterday. I missed our FAPSITA meeting. Danny and Jamie and I were down at Big 9, and that's mainly a meeting with, well, it's a meeting with the superintendents, the high school principals, and the activities directors of all schools in the conference. We break off into our groups, talk about issues within the conference, not just athletics, but all over the place between academics and things that the superintendents talk. It's mostly productive with the principals and the ADs. It's good to get together with the superintendents. Coffee with the superintendent was that this morning already, Andy? Yeah. I'm losing track of days. So we've had 4 meetings now, coffee with the superintendent, mainly to talk about what we did wrong with the bond, what we can do better with the bond, what are some ideas that you as a community members have for the bond, and just feeding Andy. And Andy's done a nice job of taking some notes and giving some ideas of what we can do differently. And we've had meetings with manufacturers, some of the businesses in town, bankers, one finance person, and a couple others. Next meeting will be with realtors and educational institutions, and we're going to have that one at Hy-Vee. So they've gone very well. They've been very open. They've been very open.
When you do those, is there any chance you could compile notes and send them back to us? I'd just be really curious the feedback that you're hearing.
Andy's yes, yeah. We will. Yeah, Andy's doing it right now.
Thank you.
We've been trying to keep it as informal as possible, but Andy's capturing some of the ideas and the concepts within there. So, and then I was at the Rice County Mitigation for Natural Hazards today. There's probably there's 40, 50 people in there talking about what happens if there's a natural disaster in Faribault, like flooding or tornadoes, and what sort of plan do we have to get so that we can, if we need to, access FEMA funds. So that was a good meeting. They're just coming up with the plan again and revising it from 5 years, and I was glad to be part of that process. That's all I have.
Thank you. By the way, 2 good calls on snow days.
Thank you.
Yes. Wow.
We got walloped pretty good.
Dates to remember, board members, I'll draw your attention to the 8 various committee meetings that are meeting the next month. And for the public, I will mention that on Monday, February 12th, we will have a work session here at the district office at 5:30, and our next regular board meeting is Monday, February 26th here at the district office. I believe we can conclude, but I know you like to vote on this, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, want to discuss? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Motion carries.